Then what I've decided to do is we're going to take it to Dynasty Twitter, to Fantasy Twitter, where I've already put out polls and I've gotten the answer to what Fantasy Twitter, who is now going to be our referee essentially, is going to tell us if they think trade calculator A or trade calculator B is correct. And we're going to have a little round, 5-round bout, and we'll name a champion, and we'll do that for a bit. And then we'll also take whoever wins that little competition to a second round where we will look at a couple uses, extra uses besides just trade calculating that I found are kind of useful and interesting, that can kind of give us some perspective and give some value, something to kind of add to our portfolio of things that we can kind of use, tools we can use. So I will say that I am not endorsing any of these products, nor am I saying that any of these products are bad if they lose a trade. These are 5 specific trades that I came up with that I was literally going to make or have already offered or plan to offer when my leagues start. And in that context, I just built the trade and went through it very organically and wanted to kind of use these trade calculators to use that. So I just want to make that very clear that this is only 5 trades. This is not saying that one calculator is better than the other calculator, that I endorse either of them. Personally, like I said, I still am very weary of trade calculators and using them for much more. And you'll find, I think really what it comes down to is it's just player to player. One calculator or one person will value a player as particularly higher than another person, or a calculator will value that player, and it's got to be put into either points or like in as far as people, we just kind of like rate them and have these rankings, these quote rankings as we put them, and it's all the same. It's either putting a number value on or whatever. So essentially what you're doing is you're taking somebody else's rankings and they're giving you value numbers to show you. And we're going to kind of go over that, and we're going to kind of see if there's any variations or things we can learn from that, things we can use from that. And also, like I said, try to entertain and have a little fun doing it, and hopefully learn a little bit along the way. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in, not live, from the Big Knowledge Football Studios in Sonny's Garage, the Big Knowledge Football Dynasty Calculate Championship of the World. In the blue corner, weighing in with years of experience, quite possibly the pioneers of trade calculating. It's probably the first name that comes up when you Google Dynasty Football Trade Calculator. They have true brand recognition. If you think of Kleenex when you think of tissues, or Q-tips when you think of cotton swabs, when you think of Dynasty Football Trade Calculators, you probably think of the Dynasty Trade Calculator. And its opponent, weighing in with 0 experience, its first year as a trade calculator. However, this calculator comes from a very strong pedigree of football statistical accomplishments. From the same bloodlines as Roto Underworld Podcast and PlayerProfiler.com, the new calculator on the block, the upstart application, ladies and gentlemen, the Dynasty Dominator App. Okay, and now I'll stop talking in this cheesy voice and get to the tail of the tape. Alright, so the tail of the tape. Let's talk about these 2 boxer fighter dominating calculators in this calculating showdown. So first of all, let's take a look at the Dynasty Trade Calculator. This is a long time, years of experience calculator. This one's been around maybe the longest of all trade calculators. I can't honestly tell you, but I know it's been around a long time. And this is the one that I purchased a few years back for $1 or $2. And yeah, they just have a lot of experience. So that with coming that experience would be, probably a lot of refinement, probably a lot of experimentation with their algorithms and stuff. A lot more experience and have seen things come and go. Know how to react to those kind of things in terms of valuing players and picks and assets and stuff. So that's a good thing to have, some experience. Other positives, it's just $2 for a month if you want to buy that, or it's $10 for the year. So affordable if you want to buy a couple coffees instead, that's fine. But this is a useful tool, and I found it useful, and I went ahead and paid the $10. Like I said, this is not an endorsement for them. This is me as your Dynasty friend telling you about what I use, because I am also a consumer. And I'm splurging for you as my podcast listeners and for my Dynasty teams, let me tell you. So on to other positives about the trade calculator. They have Superflex, 2QB, and tight end premium settings all included with that purchase. now let's take a look at the negatives for the Dynasty Trade Calculator. Two things I noticed was that it doesn't actually value in any kind of roster spot value, which we'll talk about later. And it's something that I think is going to be an important asset for us when you need to calculate in just blank spaces, because those blank spaces later become players. So that does not get included into the trade calculator. And another thing was that you can't actually see any kind of list of their players. You don't get any kind of ranking list along with that calculator. You're just stuck with kind of punching in each name individually and finding out how it kind of calculates up on their calculator. Okay, so let's move over to the other side, the newbie, the Dynasty Dominator app from the Roto World Underworld. So this is a $5 app. That's a good thing, except for on the downside is if you want the QB premium or the Superflex or tight end premium settings, you had to pay extra. So $5 more for the Superflex and then $3 more for the tight end premium. And, even though I didn't think I would really use the tight end premium that much, I just went ahead and paid the $3 extra. I spare no expense for you guys. So we'll talk a couple more of the positives. So even though they don't have a lot of experience in this realm in terms of dynasty trade calculators and stuff, they are known for their stats. I mean, stats and metrics are kind of what they do over there. So it's not surprising that they've tipped their toe in here and they're going full on with an application, which personally I prefer because I have my iPhone and my apps and stuff, and so I like apps, and so I thought that was cool to see. And the price point was good for $5. They also have a setting in there which at first I found kind of annoying, and I'll mention this later, but I'll just kind of mention it now as well, which was when you put the players in the trade calculator, you don't get to see the points of each individual player. It just calculates it up. And at first I was kind of like, this is just frustrating. I have to, kind of like break them apart and figure out. But the reason they did that is because they actually calculate in the roster spots. So they're not going to let you work out that trade without calculating in the holes on the other side and calculating points for those. So we'll kind of go over that as we see. So I thought that was actually a bonus for them. And then another bonus for them is that they actually have on the app a list which you can go down that kind of like rank. It's basically like a player rankings, like a life hack here. When you buy this app, you essentially get their player rankings. I don't know how much different it would be than getting their player rankings because it just breaks it down player by player by player, and you can go find individual players and kind of see where they rate compared to all the other players. So I thought that was a definite bonus for the newbie Dynasty Dominator app. Okay, so now that we've got the tail of the tape done, let's go ahead and just get into the way this is going to work. Like I said, it's going to be pretty simple. It's going to be a one round, one trade. I'm going to tell you how I thought it up. These are real trades that I wanted to make in my leagues. And I started by just kind of saying, well, I wonder about this. I wonder if I could put this together and that together. Then I ran it through one of the calculators. I ran it through the other calculator. And then they disagree. I would go ahead and put out a poll to Dynasty Twitter. And I would get back the feedback and compare. And Dynasty Twitter is now the referee, or actually the judges. I'm the referee. I'm the referee standing here trying to work this all out. And Dynasty Twitter is the judge. They're going to go ahead and decide which trade calculator is more in tune with the current market value of what people think that is. Now, that doesn't mean this is right. Neither of these calculators are predicting the future. We don't know what's right. Right is going to be what happens afterwards. But we know, I want to sometimes get a gauge on what the sentiment is, on especially like real-time value. Because you can oftentimes see, like I saw a poll not too long ago where it was like Dante Moncrief and Miles Boykin. And it was Miles Boykin got creamed on this thing because Dante Moncrief has got news that he's the number 2 for sure receiver. So all of a sudden it's like he's got this little offseason boost and Miles Boykin is buried on this Ravens team. But my thought is okay, that's kind of news, it's news dependent. I don't think this poll would be so extremely one-sided if it wasn't because of the current kind of weather. But what we need to know is what is the current weather of these players? What is the current atmosphere? What's their market value right now? And so these kind of Twitter things, Twitter is in a sense a trade calculator. As we talked before, you may have heard my Twitter Epiphany podcast, mini podcasts ago. And it was essentially this that I was figuring out how to get the same feedback. But I find that the Twitter feedback is more valuable, in my opinion, because you're getting real-time response from a lot of people who are very passionate about Dynasty football. These polls don't go out to everybody in the universe. They go out to specific people who want to answer the question and are really into, kind of getting the same information. So it works really well. It's a nice little, of the hive mind kind of stuff. This is one of my favorite parts because it allows us to just kind of get a real grasp on all the information that's going around and how everybody's feeling about it. So that is essentially what we're going to do is round by round, we're going to take it and we're going to award a point to whichever side is more closely accurate with Twitter, or Twitter is, kind of siding with, they're going to get that point. And after 5 rounds, if we have a winner, we're going to declare a winner, and then we'll move on to the second round. So let's go ahead and get right to it. Trade number 1. Now, how this one happened, it was just a league I had where I have a pretty good team, but I had a couple aging guys. I have Travis Kelce and Zach Ertz, and I had Julio Jones, and I felt like I was kind of ready to see if I couldn't move Julio and maybe Zach Ertz and get a little younger. And I, kind of had some players in mind, so I decided it was pretty simple to me. I went and looked at a guy's team who had O.J. Howard because I thought, well, it'd be nice to add O.J. Howard. I've already talked about O.J. Howard. And he happened to have Devontae Adams as well, and I thought, oh, man, what a fit. If I could pick up Devontae Adams and O.J. Howard for Julio Jones and Zach Ertz, that would be a wonderful thing, right? So I go ahead and start putting this trade together, and I think, oh, no, I'll go ahead and put this through my trade calculator. So I go to the Dynasty Trade Calculator, and I put this information in, and it comes up where I get a Julio Jones 38 points and a Zach Ertz 25.2 points and a Devontae Adams 47.8 points and an O.J. Howard 14.6 points, which gives the calculation a 63.2 to 62.4 edge to Julio and Ertz side. So I'm thinking, great. This is perfect because not only do I really love this trade, and I think this will fit everything I want, it's going to get me a little younger and gets my upside guys and stuff, but I also feel like I'm making a trade that could be considered positive on their side. So I went ahead and ran this trade now backed by the Dynasty Dominator. I said, okay, you tell me what you think, Dynasty Dominator. And I went ahead and punched these numbers in, and it came back quite different. So it was pretty even from the Dynasty Trade Calculator, but the Dominator did not have it even at all. The Dominator basically said, no, there's no way you're pulling this trade off. It said Devontae Adams and O.J. Howard are considerably more valuable than Julio and Ertz. It said 178.33 to 134.17. Wow, okay, so immediately I say, all right, now this is a clear differentiation. We need to now find out which one of these trade calculators is right, because if I send this trade, and I did send this trade, by the way, we'll find out, I kind of see what happens. So I take it to Twitter. I put it out on Twitter. I send it out to my fantasy league and some other guys I know that are all fantasy football, dynasty football, super flex oriented. And everybody kind of tweets it out. There's responses and everything. It comes back unanimous. 75% of people say, I'll take Devontae Adams and O.J. Howard. Not even close. So it's pretty clear, pretty unanimous. Point to the Dynasty Dominator. I did send that trade offer. It never got declined, but it never got accepted. The guy just basically let it sit there. So that's not a good sign. It didn't get his attention, or if it did get his attention, he quickly moved on. So, okay, on to round number 2. So round 1 goes to Dynasty Dominator. Okay, round 2, a different league. I had Antonio Brown, and I was thinking I would like to trade him because I have a lot of good wide receivers in this league, but I don't have anything at tight end. So I was thinking, maybe I could trade for Kelce. AB, Kelce, kind of valued around the same. Personally, I value Kelce a little bit more, but I was thinking, a lot of people still have a lot of hopes for AB, and he's still going to produce. So, all right, let me see if I can just kind of package, see what I can do for AB and Kelce. So I punch it into the Dynasty Trade Calculator, and it comes back that AB is worth 34.1 points, and Kelce is worth 28.7 points. So immediately I'm like, So it says that AB is worth more. Well, maybe I can get an upgrade in another position. So I go and look at the guy's lineup, and there's Chris Godwin. And immediately I'm like, oh, I love Chris Godwin. And I have Jarvis Landry. Okay, this is a nice fit. Let's go ahead and add these two in to the equation to see what happens here. So I add Godwin and I add Landry, and the trade calculator comes up. Jarvis Landry 18.3, Chris Godwin 16.2. And immediately I'm like, oh, wow, okay. So I'm gaining in this trade. Maybe I can upgrade another position. So sure enough, I go and look at his roster. There's Tariq Cohen. I love Tariq Cohen. So I have Kalen Ballage on my lineup. I like Kalen Ballage, but I don't think he's a great running back. I think he's, there's some potential there, but there's a lot of still iffiness. I love Cohen. And so this is a huge upgrade for me. And I just say, okay, let's put these two in there. So that comes back, and Cohen comes back at 9.2, and Ballage comes back at 3.2. So that does even it back up a little bit. So here, looking at the trade in terms of if I just did those 3 for 3 on the Dynasty Trade Calculator, I come up with 55.7 for the AB Landry Ballage side and 54.2 for the Kelce Godwin Cohen side. So again, I'm feeling really good because I'm thinking, all right, this is a trade I like. All 3 pieces, I feel like I'm getting an upgrade on all 3 sides, and yet the calculator's telling me that I'm making a better trade, that I'm actually offering them a little bit more in value. So that's now we got to take it over to the Dominator. Okay, so Dominator, let's ask you. So I punch in and I bring it up with Antonio Brown and Kelsey. It brings up Antonio Brown at 85.62, Kelsey at 80. Then you got Jarvis Landry versus Chris Godwin, and that's where the big difference comes. So this one, the Dynasty Dominator app, brings up Chris Godwin considerably more valuable than Landry. And then Cohen and Balaj show up, and Cohen's about twice as valuable as Balaj instead of 3 times as valuable. But in the end, the number of points are heavily favored to the Kelsey Godwin Cohen side. So 187.19 to 152.9, which is 18% more. So on one side, it's very close in favor to the other side. On this one, it's saying, nope, again, Sonny, this trade's not going to happen. You're not going to get this one. Okay, so of course, I take it to Dynasty Twitter. I say, Dynasty Twitter, tell me what you think. Who has a better who's more accurately predicting what the real sentiment of the Dynasty players is on this trade? So we got 118 votes back, and yeah, it was a drubbing. It was 113 votes, I'm sorry. 86% took the Kelsey Godwin Cohen side, and there was a lot of comments as well saying, I'll take the best tight end and the upstart wide receiver. That was clear that with Cohen, and it was 86% to the Cohen Kelsey Godwin side. So that's a clear point and clear drubbing round for the Dynasty Dominator. We're at 2 rounds to nothing for the Dynasty Dominator, and like I said, this is Twitter speaking, and these trades. Like I said, this is information that I gotta say, the Dynasty Dominator, with all of his experience, coming out a little disappointing. And maybe it's because this is my guess on this is, as I look at it, it's youth. There's certain young players that are getting boosted by not only the Fantasy Twitter, but also by the Dynasty Dominator app. It's reading that, and it's on it so far. So anyway, on to the number 3 round. So the third round, I'm just going to kind of spill the beans. It was a draw. It was a boring round, almost no excitement. I was trying to build a trade with Sony Michel or James Conner, and I had some different tight ends. I thought I'd move like Dave Njoku. I was thinking of trying to get like Brandon Cooks or O.J. Howard or Calvin Ridley or Dante Pettis. I put this trade together in multiple facets. Pretty much all of them agreed that it was close, but that it wasn't that, like, it favored me on all pretty much all assets. Even like it considerably favored me with Sony Michel, and then it favored me a little less with James Conner. But what I learned from that is great. So I'll start it off offering with Sony Michel, and then I'll move to James Conner, and then if I had to add a little bit more, it's still probably in my favor based on both of these trade calculators, if I'm asking the trade calculator. So they both agreed, therefore it's a draw. Round 3, we are moving to round 4. Round 4, it comes in. This was a super flex league, even though it's not any quarterbacks. I think it's I guess it's important to mention that. And I have a stockpile at running back. I have shares of Damian Williams in a lot of leagues, and I just think that this is a good league to maybe try to sell one of those shares of Damian Williams. And I need some wide receiver help. I'd like to add a good wide receiver. So I'm thinking, okay, let me look over the landscape. Let me see if there's some receivers kind of right in this area. What would I like? What would I maybe take? So I came across a team that needed some running back help, and they had both Tyler Boyd and Christian Kirk. And I thought, yeah, these are both good kind of things for me. Let me see what the Dynasty Trade app, this Dynasty Trade Calculator and this Dynasty Dominator thing, what they think about what I can get for Damian Williams. Am I asking too much, or do I need to ask more? Where am I at with Damian Williams? So I go ahead and I punch Damian Williams into the trade calculator, and he comes up at 15.7. Then I touched Tyler Boyd at 15.4, and then Christian Kirk down below at 12.7. So the way the calculator had it, it had Damian Williams at the top, it had Tyler Boyd right behind him, and then considerably lower, not considerably, but a few points lower, Christian Kirk. So now we go to the Dominator app. The Dominator app is much different. It has Christian Kirk. Now the point things are different. They kind of give more points, but it's all perspective and percentages is what you have to look at. So Christian Kirk is actually their number 1 guy. He's getting 69.6 points, followed by Boyd with 57.9, followed by Damian Williams at 50.7. So this is where I go, okay, this is the clear differentiation, because one's got Damian Williams at the top, the other has Christian Kirk at the top. One's kind of higher on Tyler Boyd, the other's on kind of low on Christian Kirk. We can get Twitter to answer this one for us. So I went ahead and went to Twitter, and I said, all right, Twitter, talk to me. What do you think? So this one we got a lot of votes too. This was a good one in terms of getting an answer of what the people thought. We got a lot of tweets on this one, and with 225 votes. I guess not a lot of votes, but more than the others, almost twice as many. Tyler Boyd won at 38%, followed by Christian Kirk at 32%, followed by Damian Williams at 30%. So both of them were kind of wrong on the Damian Williams, and I would say even the trade calculator was the lowest on Damian Williams. I mean, the highest on Damian Williams, and he was the lowest. But they were also the highest on Tyler Boyd, and Tyler Boyd was by far the highest voted wide receiver. So I'm going to give the point to the Dynasty Trade Calculator. This one is close. There was some, kind of ups and downs, but I think as the referee, I think it's pretty clear that Tyler Boyd was the chosen wide receiver, the chosen piece, and according to the Dynasty Dominator app, it was Christian Kirk that was the most valuable player. And so, it's close. I think it was a close round, a lot of good punches thrown, but I think the point edge goes to the Dynasty Trade Calculator. So there we are through 4 rounds. We have a 2-1 edge for the Dynasty Dominator. We have first 2 rounds, they came out swinging. Last round was a tie, and this last round was a win for the Dynasty Trade Calculator. And on to round number 5. So here in the 5th round, it is another 2 QB question, and this one actually entails a quarterback. What I have is a league where I have a 2-quarterback league. I have Pat Mahomes, I have Dak Prescott, I have Mitchell Trubisky, and I have Mason Rudolph, and I have Andy Dalton. And so I'm looking to trade Andy Dalton because I'm not sure if he's going to keep that job after this year. And if he does keep it this year, he's not going to probably do me much good because he's not making the field. So this is a good time to try to capitalize, try to get some of that value for him as a quarterback in a 2-quarterback league. So I'm looking over to try to figure out what can I get. I'm punching in different players. It was kind of hard to build this trade, to be honest with you, because I was trying to figure out who needs a quarterback, who actually, what are players that I can ask for. I need a little depth, so I was thinking, maybe I'll ask for a multiplayer piece. I kind of came to the conclusion that here's a good questionable package that might spark some controversy or whatever question, because Marquez Valdez-Scantling, he would be the centerpiece of this package because he could be the number 2, and if you're the number 2 Aaron Rodgers, suddenly you're going to be it changes, but then by mid-year his value is going to suddenly, if he's actually that guy, it's going to be much different than this kind of questionable piece that he is right now. Then you got Chris Thompson and Matt Breida, both running backs who are scorers potentially, kind of need it. Breida probably needs a little injury, but they all have decent value. They're valuable little pieces, except for they're not a quarterback. So then you got Andy Dalton on the other side. So this one I thought was interesting because I'm not, when I looked at some of these trades, I made some of these offers. I think I told you I made, I don't know if I mentioned what happened in some of these offers. Basically, the first 2 trades that I offered got either rejected or didn't even get looked at. And then the third trade, I think the league hasn't started yet. To me, it's trying to put these into place and actually make workable, doable trades. In this trade right here with Andy Dalton, I don't know if I'm going to do it. I just kind of trying to put together and get information. This one, I honestly, I don't think I'll send. I'll probably more be likely to just continue to kind of gather information and see what else I can get. But I wanted to kind of start with this because when I did put this together, it did actually come out with a disagreement in terms of the 2 calculators. And so let's get into that. So when we looked at the calculator, the Dynasty Trade Calculator, I did say the nice thing about that one, it actually has 2 different settings. It has a Superflex setting and a 2-quarterback setting. And when you put it on Superflex, Andy Dalton was worth 10.3 points. If you put it on 2-quarterback, he was 10.8. So it gave him just a little bit of boost. When you look over at MVS, Chris Thompson and Matt Breida, they're not very valued by the Dynasty Trade Calculator. MVS is worth 2.3 points. Chris Thompson 2.2 and Matt Breida 2.1. So when you look at the trade overall, you're looking at 10.8 to 6.6, extremely heavy in the Andy Dalton favor. Okay, so then we look over at the Dynasty Dominator app and we say, okay, well, what is the Dynasty Dominator app thing? And this is where I talked about the roster spot thing, because when you just look at Andy Dalton, he's valued at 24.5 points in terms of 2 QB league. But when you put him in there and then you put those 3 pieces, Valdez-Scantling, Chris Thompson, and Matt Breida add up to 63.99 points, almost 64 points. Remember, Andy Dalton's only worth 24.52, but they add an extra 20 points. So 10 points per free roster spot, going to 44.52. Still making it considerably heavy on the Valdez-Scantling side, 63.99 to 44.52. being Andy Dalton plus 2 roster spots. So I thought that was interesting that even though the trade calculator doesn't calculate in the roster spots, it still had Andy Dalton considerably more valuable. And even though the Dynasty Trade Calculator is incorporating this roster spot, it still had Andy Dalton considerably less value. So this was clearly an interpretation of what the value of a quarterback in a 2-quarterback league is. And so we will talk more. I'm going to be doing a 2-quarterback league episode or a Superflex or something about quarterbacks and all of that at some point, but it's going to be a few weeks out. I'm taking my family camping next weekend. There's going to be a little break. I'm going to be putting a lot into this podcast, but then from there, there's going to be a break, and we're going to it's going to be a few weeks before I can actually get to some more Dynasty talk. But yes, Superflex is coming. But so I wanted to look at this. So we went ahead and sent this one back out to Twitter to the judges and to see what the judges' scorecard came back. We got 165 votes. And this one was really interesting because it was 58% to the MVS, Matt Breida, Chris Thompson side. 58% to that side, the package, over the Andy Dalton side. But what I found interesting was that I send this out to a lot of, guys that are industry guys that I play in a league with some guys who are podcasters and industry type guys, Superflex guys. And there was a strong pushback. People were coming to the QB support. I mean, there were guys that I respect coming out being like, dude, the quarterbacks are just the most valuable pieces. And I agree with them. I think that there's definitely something to be said about 2-quarterback leagues, depending on who you're talking to and how much quarterback they need. So this was a very controversial one. I thought this was perfect for a boxing match where if you look at the points, if we just take it to the scorecard, if we let Twitter decide, it is the Dynasty Dominator app winning 3 rounds. That's the 3rd round. That's the fight, folks. And the thing about it is, though, it's so close. Partially I agree. Like I don't think I will offer this trade and sell Andy Dalton for this. And I also, like I said, got some pushback from some very respectable guys in the industry. And yet all the rest of the people voted. The votes are in, and it is a win for a round for the Dynasty Dominator app. So there you go. Your Big Knowledge Football Dynasty Calculate Champion of the World is the Dynasty Dominator app for now. So anyway, congrats to the Dynasty Dominator app. You will be moving on to the 2nd round where we will do some breakdowns and learn a little bit, and you will be able to kind of help us move on and see some uses for apps. And like I said, this is not a shot against the Dynasty Trade Calculator. In fact, I love the Dynasty Trade Calculator and use it. And I just, someday if I get enough growth in this podcast to get sponsors and stuff, you look out. We're gonna be going like a shopping spree for trade calculators. We're gonna do a full on like Royal Rumble of trade calculators. So but right now we're balling on a budget here, and these are things that I actually use and do, and that's kind of why I think as a Dynasty player, there's a lot of, to me, I just feel like, there's a lot of podcasts out there, and there's a lot of people that have their own trade calculators, and they have no problem talking about how valuable their trade calculator is. But I don't think there's anybody out there just saying, hey, well, let's take a look at it. Let's try it. Let's give some feedback on it. Let's kind of compare them. So here I am. That's what I'm here for.